Daria used to think $100,000 a year was the finish line, the number that finally ended all financial stress. She remembers exactly where she was standing when she got the offer, the moment that felt like everything was solved. 18 months later, she is staring at a checking account with $340 in it. For days before payday arrives, wondering how a person earning six figures ended up right back where she started. Before the raise even happened, she is not alone. And that is exactly the problem this entire video is about to unpack carefully. A recent national survey found that more than a third of Americans earning six figures live, paycheck to paycheck, a number that would have sounded impossible a generation ago and now barely raises an eyebrow from anyone. So what is actually happening to that money? And more importantly, what can you do about it starting now? Stay with me, because the answer is not what most people assume. And it is not about lattes. Here is the real problem hiding underneath every headline about six-figure earners struggling. And discipline has almost nothing to do with it. The number, 100,000 lives in most people's heads as one solid figure. But the actual number is completely different. Almost nobody sits down to calculate the gap until the confusion has already fully set into their daily life between federal tax, state tax, Social Security, and Medicare. A $100,000 salary typically shrinks in a very specific way, down to somewhere between $72,000 and $78,000 in actual take-home pay for most single filers across the country. That range swings even lower in high-tax states, depending entirely on exactly where a person happens to live. That is the first and most invisible leak. And it happens before a single dollar touches a checking account, which is exactly why it never shows up in anyone's mental math when picturing what six figures should feel like. Now take that real number, roughly $75,000 in a typical year, and run it through where Americans actually live. Because this is where the second invisible leak happens, quietly and almost completely unnoticed until it is far too late. Housing costs have climbed to a point where the old 30% rule is now treated as a nostalgic suggestion. In many mid-size and large American cities, a modest one-bedroom apartment now runs between $1,800 and $2,600 a month, which on its own can eat 30 to 40% of that. $75,000 before groceries or a single discretionary dollar is spent. Daria's rent alone for a perfectly ordinary apartment was consuming 34% of her take-home pay every single month, a figure she had never actually calculated until she sat down specifically to make this video's math work. Here is the part of the story that catches even careful, responsible earners completely off guard every single time. And it explains why a six-figure salary and financial stress can exist in the exact same person at once. It is called lifestyle creep, and it is almost never one big reckless decision. It is dozens of small ones. Daria did not buy a mansion or lease a Lamborghini. She made choices that each felt completely reasonable alone. She moved from a shared apartment to a solo one the moment the raise actually landed in her account, upgraded her car because the old one felt embarrassing, to drive to client meetings around the city, started ordering dinner 3 nights a week because cooking felt like something she no longer had to do, and slowly added a handful of subscriptions and small upgrades that each felt justified. In the moment added, none of those decisions alone would bankrupt anyone, but stacked together they quietly absorbed the entire raise and more, which is the exact mechanism behind almost every six-figure paycheck to paycheck story happening across the country right now. There is a specific psychological trap wrapped up in this pattern that is worth naming directly and clearly here. Behavioral economists call it hedonic adaptation, the tendency for a new spending level to feel normal within weeks, at which point going Back to the old level feels like a real loss instead of a simple return. Once Daria's solo apartment felt normal, downsizing again felt like failure. Even though the old place made her happy, the raise did not just get spent. It got absorbed into a new baseline that now felt non-negotiable to her. And that baseline is precisely what keeps a $100,000 earner feeling broke no matter how many raises arrive later. So let's get into exactly what to do about it, starting with the step almost nobody actually takes, even though it costs nothing at all and takes about 20 minutes of honest, uncomfortable math to complete. Solution 1. Know your real number, not your salary number, because those two figures are never actually the same thing. Calculate your actual take-home pay after taxes. Then subtract fixed essential costs, housing, insurance, minimum debt, realistic groceries. What is left is the only number that actually matters for every single decision you make going forward. For most $100,000 earners in an average cost city, that number lands somewhere between $1,200 and $2,000 a month, not the $8,300 a month their salary implies before any of the invisible leaks are properly accounted for. Daria's real number, once she finally calculated it honestly, turned out to be $1,450 a month, nothing more. Everything else in her financial life had quietly been built on a number that was never actually real. Solution 2. Freeze the lifestyle, not the raises, because this move costs nothing beyond one decision made once. The next time a raise, bonus, or windfall arrives, the goal is not avoiding enjoyment, it is protecting the gap. Let your savings rate rise at least as fast as your spending does, ideally faster than it ever has. A simple version of this rule: keep lifestyle spending frozen for 60 days after any raise arrives at all, and direct the difference straight into savings before it has a chance to quietly become the new normal. Daria adopted this rule after her next small raise and finally watched her savings account grow instead of staying flat. Solution 3. Attack the silent leaks first, before touching anything that feels like a genuine, painful sacrifice at all. Daria's audit of her own spending found $310 a month in subscriptions and recurring charges she could not justify, a car insurance policy that was $60 a month more expensive than a comparable one from another provider entirely, and a habit of ordering delivery costing nearly $400 a month more than the same meals made at home. None of that required giving up her lifestyle. It required looking directly at where the money was actually going. Combined, those three fixes alone recovered close to $700 a month, more than double a typical modest raise, without a single visible change to how her life actually looked from the outside to anyone watching her. Solution 4. Let your location work for you instead of against you, because this lever is often the largest one. Someone earning $100,000 in a high-cost city may have meaningfully less real purchasing power than someone earning far less elsewhere. Once rent, taxes, and cost of living are actually factored in side by side across both locations honestly. This does not mean everyone should uproot their life immediately, but the location decision deserves the same serious math, especially for anyone with the flexibility of remote work, where a location change costs nothing but genuine consideration. A $25,000 difference in cost of living can matter more than a $25,000 difference in salary ever really will. Here is what actually separates the two groups of $100,000 earners in America: the ones who quietly build wealth and the ones who stay stuck no matter how many raises arrive over the course of their entire career. It was never really about the size of the paycheck sitting on the offer letter in the first place. Every solution in this video points back to the same underlying habit worth protecting above almost everything else: treating the gap between income and lifestyle as the thing worth protecting, not the salary number as proof of safety. A $100,000 salary with a widening gap between earning and spending builds real, lasting wealth over time steadily. A $100,000 salary with a shrinking gap, no matter how impressive it sounds at a dinner party, stays broke. Year after year, raise after raise, exactly the way Doria's did for 18 months before she finally sat down. So here is your actual next step. And it takes less time than the video you just finished watching. Calculate your real take-home number today, not your salary number, before doing anything else with this information at all. Identify one recurring leak this week, a subscription, an insurance policy, a habit, and fix it before the month ends. And the next time a raise arrives, freeze your lifestyle for 60 days before it becomes your new normal. None of these steps require earning more money. They require seeing the money you already have more clearly. If this explains something about your own paycheck that never quite added up, subscribe and stay for more. Because every week on this channel we break down exactly where money actually goes, not where we assume it goes. And I want to know in the comments, when you calculated your real take-home number, was it close to expected? Or did it genuinely surprise you the way it surprised Daria? And tell me which leak you are fixing first.